Pennsylvania has 57 counties, 46,000 square miles, and a reputation for being the state people drive through on the way to somewhere else. That's a mistake, because hiding inside this state are places so strange, so forgotten, and so genuinely hard to believe that even people who grew up here have never heard of them. Here are the 20 secret places in Pennsylvania even locals can't believe exist. Place 20, Centralia, the town that has been on fire. Since 1962, there is a borough in Columbia County where the ground has been burning for over 60 years. Not metaphorically, literally on fire, underground, right now, as you watch this. In May 1962, the Centralia Borough Council hired workers to clean up the town landfill, located in an abandoned strip mine pit adjacent to the Oddfellows Cemetery, by setting it on fire, standard practice at the time. The problem was that the fire was never fully extinguished. An unsealed opening in the pit allowed flames to enter the labyrinth of abandoned anthracite coal mines running beneath the entire town. Anthracite burns hot, slow, and almost indefinitely under the right conditions. Centralia had those conditions. By the 1980s, sinkholes were opening in yards, carbon monoxide was seeping into basements, and trees were dying in the middle of residential blocks. On Valentine's Day 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski nearly fell to his death when a sinkhole opened beneath him in his backyard. The hole was 150 feet deep and venting steam at 180 degrees. He survived by grabbing an exposed tree root and holding on until his cousin pulled him out. Pennsylvania spent over $7 million attempting to extinguish the fire before giving up. In 1992, the state condemned all remaining structures and effectively erased the town. The ZP code was discontinued in 2002. As of the 2020 census, 4 people still live there. Experts estimate the fire could burn for another 250 years. Centralia is the direct real-world inspiration for the Silent Hill video game series. The famous stretch of abandoned Route 61, known as Graffiti Highway, covered in decades of visitor artwork, was buried under dirt in April 2020 by the landowner after liability concerns. A single Ukrainian Greek Catholic church continues to hold weekly services on the hill above the empty streets, surrounded by roads that go nowhere and address signs for houses that no longer exist. Place 19, Ringing Rocks County Park, a boulder field that sounds like bells. In Bucks County, there is a 7-acre field of boulders. You are expected to bring a hammer. When you strike the right rocks, they ring like bells. Ringing Rocks County Park sits near Upper Black Eddy. The boulders are diabase, a dense, igneous rock from the Jurassic period. And when struck, many produce a clear, metallic, resonant tone that sounds nothing like what you'd expect from hitting a rock with a hand tool. A Rutgers University researcher in the 1960s identified the most likely cause. Repeated rainfall causes the outer surfaces to undergo chemical weathering, creating internal elastic stress that generates the acoustic effect. Not all the rocks ring. The ones that do have been worn smooth by well over a century of visitors. In 1890, a local physician named J.J. Ott organized what historians have described as possibly the first rock concert in recorded history, performing selections on the boulders for the Buck Wampum Historical Society, accompanied by the Pleasant Valley Band. In 1895, a New Jersey banker named Abel B. Herring purchased the field specifically to protect it from quarrying and donated it to the Bucks County Historical Society in 1918. Native American oral traditions passed to early settlers describe the boulder field as having an eerie quality. Animals reportedly refused to cross it, and the surface supported almost no plant life. Nobody has fully explained that part either. The park is free. There's a waterfall a short walk away. Bring the hammer. Place 18, the Mutter Museum. Philadelphia's Cabinet of Medical Impossibilities. The College of Physicians of Philadelphia has a museum containing slides of Albert Einstein's brain, the fused liver of Chang and Ing Bunker, the original Siamese twins, a collection of 2,374 objects extracted from patients' airways over one physician's career, a 9-foot-long human colon, and the preserved remains of a woman whose body fat transformed into a soap-like substance after death. The Mutter Museum was founded in 1858 when surgeon Thomas Dent Mutter donated approximately 1,700 specimens to the college. It didn't open to the general public until the 1970s. The Einstein brain slides arrived in 2011 through a chain beginning with Thomas Harvey, the pathologist who removed Einstein's brain at autopsy in 1955 without family permission and kept it for decades. The museum also holds a tumor removed from President Grover Cleveland's jaw during a secret 1893 operation performed aboard a yacht on the East River, kept from the public for nearly 25 years. There is an electrometer gifted by Marie Curie in 1921 and Florence Nightingale's sewing kit. The Hertel Skull Collection, 139 human skulls assembled by Austrian anatomist Joseph Hertel to disprove phrenology, is labeled with name, age, cause of death, and origin for each individual. Over 160,000 people visit the Mutter per year. The majority are not from Philadelphia. Place 17, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania's Roswell. On December 9, 1965, at approximately 4:45 in the afternoon, a fireball crossed the sky over 6 U.S. states and parts of Canada. Thousands of people witnessed it. Something came down near the small Westmoreland County community of Kecksburg. Witnesses who reached the site before military personnel described a partially buried metallic object, roughly the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, shaped like an acorn. Bronze-colored, with no visible seams or fasteners, and bearing markings along a band near its base that resembled Egyptian hieroglyphics. The U.S. Army arrived, roped off the area, loaded something onto a flatbed truck under a tarp, and left. The official statement was that there had been nothing there to find. In 2005, NASA stated that their experts had determined fragments were from a Soviet satellite, but that the relevant records had been lost sometime in the 1980s. A federal lawsuit filed in 2003 forced NASA to conduct a formal search. 2 boxes of documents from the period of the incident were found to be missing. I remain convinced that an object of still undetermined origin fell from the sky into a wooded area near Kecksburg. Stan Gordon, independent researcher who has investigated the case since 1965. A life-sized replica of the acorn-shaped object, built by the production crew of the television show Unsolved Mysteries in 1990 and left behind after filming, stands on a pole outside the local volunteer fire station. There is a UFO store. A street was renamed Meteor Road. The annual Kecksburg UFO Festival draws visitors every summer. The Army has never changed its story. Neither has anyone who was there that night. Place 16, Eastern State Penitentiary, far more than a Halloween attraction. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia fills up every October with people who paid to be scared. Most of them have no idea they're walking through one of the most historically significant buildings in the United States. Built in 1829, Eastern State introduced the Pennsylvania system, complete solitary confinement, every prisoner isolated at all times, never permitted to see or speak to another inmate. Alexis de Tocqueville visited in 1831 to study it. Charles Dickens visited in 1842 and called it more cruel than physical punishment. Architect John Haviland designed it as one of the most expensive structures in America at completion. Its radiating cell block layout influenced prison construction worldwide for over a century. Al Capone was held here in 1929. His cell, by multiple contemporary accounts, was furnished with rugs, paintings, a cabinet radio, and a desk lamp. Guards looked the other way. The prison closed in 1971 and is preserved in arrested decay. Crumbling vaulted ceilings, collapsed roofs, walls overtaken by vegetation. It is open for tours year-round, not just October. Most people who pass it on Fairmount Avenue daily have never gone inside. Place 15, Pine Creek Gorge. Pennsylvania's actual Grand Canyon. In Tioga County, roughly a mile off US Route 6, there is a canyon 47 miles long and up to 1,450 feet deep that most people in the state have never seen. Pine Creek Gorge was carved approximately 20,000 years ago when the Laurentide Continental Glacier blocked Pine Creek's northward drainage and forced the water south, cutting through the Allegheny Plateau over thousands of years. The National Park Service designated a 12-mile section a National Natural Landmark in 1968. The Jersey Shore, Pine Creek, and Buffalo Railroad ran along the gorge floor from 1883 to 1968, hauling timber during the era when nearby Williamsport was the largest lumber market in the world. The railroad bed is now the Pine Creek Rail Trail, 62 miles of flat converted track along the creek. At Leonard Harrison and Colton Point State Parks on opposite rims, the depth reaches 800 feet. Fall foliage peaks from late September through mid-October, turning the hardwood forest from the rim down to the water in layers. Place 14, Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, the world's first raptor sanctuary. Every fall, thousands of hawks, eagles, ospreys, and falcons funnel south through a single ridge in Berks County. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary has been counting them from the best seat on that ridge since 1934. Before the sanctuary existed, this ridge was where gunmen gathered each autumn to shoot migrating raptors by the thousands. Hawks were considered vermin. Conservationist Rosalie Edge purchased the property in 1934 specifically to end the killing and open the overlooks for observation, making it the first sanctuary in the world established to protect birds of prey. The ridge creates a natural thermal corridor as northwest winds deflect migrating birds along the Appalachian ridgeline. The single-day record for broad-winged hawks at the North Lookout stands at 21,448 birds on September 16, 1978. Hawk Mountain has published migration counts nearly continuously since the 1930s, one of the longest unbroken wildlife monitoring datasets in North America. September and October are peak season. Place 13, Jim Thorpe, the town that bought a legend. In Carbon County, a Victorian-era town in a steep river valley renamed itself in 1954 after one of the greatest athletes in American history. A man who had no known connection to the town, had never visited, and whose remains arrived through a negotiated transaction with his widow. Jim Thorpe, the Sac and Fox Nation athlete who won both the pentathlon and decathlon at the 1912 Stockholm Olympics, was stripped of his medals over a professionalism technicality and had them posthumously restored by the Sanctuaries EOC in 1983. Died in California in March 1953. His widow Patricia was unable to secure funding from Oklahoma for a proper memorial. She reached an agreement with two neighboring Pennsylvania coal towns, Mock Chunk and East Mock Chunk, which merged, renamed themselves Jim Thorpe, and built his mausoleum there in exchange for his remains and anticipated tourism revenue. Jim Thorpe's sons contested this arrangement for decades. A federal lawsuit argued the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act required the remains be returned to Oklahoma. A federal district court agreed in 2010. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals reversed in 2013. As of the most recent rulings, the mausoleum remains in Pennsylvania. The town itself is worth visiting regardless. The Old Jail Museum includes Cell 17, where a handprint reportedly reappears on the wall no matter how many times it has been painted over, said to be the mark left by Amali Maguire before his 1877 execution, pressing his hand to the stone as proof of his innocence. Place 12. Penn's Cave, the only all-water cavern tour in the United States. In Center County, near Gregg Township, there is a limestone cavern where the entire guided tour takes place by boat. Penn's Cave is the only naturally formed, commercially operated cave in the United States navigated entirely on water. The cave runs approximately 1,300 feet. A freshwater stream flows through the full passage. The widest chamber is over 60 feet across, with the ceiling rising 55 feet above the waterline. In some stretches, the roof drops to within inches of the surface. The cave holds a constant 52 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Penn's Cave has been a commercial attraction for over a century and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Most Pennsylvanians who have heard of it have never actually been. Place 11. The Bayernhof Music Museum, Pittsburgh's secret mansion. In O'Hara Township, just north of Pittsburgh, there is a privately built mansion operating as a museum of automated musical instruments that almost nobody in Pittsburgh knows exists. The Bayernhof Music Museum operates by appointment only. The collection includes orchestrions, large mechanical cabinets reproducing a full orchestra, alongside music boxes, player pianos, band organs, and Nickelodeons from the 19th and early 20th centuries. Most still function and are demonstrated during tours. Charles Brown, who built and collected throughout his life, designed the mansion with hidden passageways, themed rooms, an indoor grotto, and a basement cave with a pipe organ built directly into the rock. He donated the entire property and collection to a charitable foundation before his death. On any given tour day, most visitors have driven over an hour to get there, while people in the surrounding neighborhood have no idea what's inside. Place 10. Falling Water, for everyone who lives nearby and hasn't gone. In Fayette County, roughly 90 minutes southeast of Pittsburgh, there is a house built directly over a waterfall that the American Institute of Architects named the greatest work of American architecture ever created. Frank Lloyd Wright designed Falling Water between 1936 and 1939 for Edgar Kaufman Sr., a Pittsburgh department store owner who expected a house with a view of the falls on his rural property at Bear Run. Wright built him a house cantilevered directly over them, living areas extending on reinforced concrete terraces above the waterfall, with the sound of the water audible throughout every room. Wright reportedly designed the house in a matter of hours in September 1935 after months of delay, when Kaufman called to say he was on his way to check on progress. The drawings from that session are documented. The house was completed in 1939 and donated to the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy in 1963. The 1991 AIA survey that ranked it the best work of American architecture was not a close result. Place 9. Elk County, Wild Elk, Eastern United States. In Elk County, every September and October, the largest free-roaming elk herd east of the Rocky Mountains gathers in open meadows, and the bulls start bugling. If you haven't heard a bull elk bugle in person, nothing adequately prepares you for the actual sound. A high, escalating scream that carries across a valley in a way that seems impossible for an animal to produce. Pennsylvania's elk were completely eliminated by the late 1800s through unregulated hunting and habitat loss. Reintroduction began in 1913 with Rocky Mountain elk transplanted from Yellowstone National Park. The herd today numbers approximately 1,400 animals. the largest free-roaming elk population in the eastern U.S. The primary viewing area is centered on Benezet in Elk County, where the state developed a wildlife management area specifically for public access. During the rut in September and early October, bulls weighing up to 1,000 pounds move through open meadows within clear view of designated observation areas, sometimes within 50 yards. The Elk Country Visitor Center draws over 200,000 visitors annually. People think you have to go to Yellowstone. You don't. You just have to drive to Benezet. A regular visitor from Center County speaking to a local news outlet. Most people in the eastern United States have no idea this exists. That is a significant gap in their knowledge of what Pennsylvania is actually holding. Place 8. Pennsylvania's covered bridges. 200 survivors nobody looks for. Pennsylvania has more covered bridges than any other state in the country. Over 200 surviving structures, most of them sitting on back roads that GPS doesn't prioritize and that most drivers never find. The majority date from the mid to late 1800s and were built using the Burr Arch Truss, a design combining a multiple king post truss with a long wooden arch, strong enough for heavy farm wagons and flexible enough to handle seasonal movement in the wooden frame. Many are still in use for vehicle traffic today. The roofs weren't decorative. An uncovered wooden bridge lasted roughly 10 years in Pennsylvania weather. A covered one lasted a century or more. The state had over 1,500 of them at their peak. Bucks County alone has more than a dozen. Most people who grew up within 20 minutes of one have never stopped to walk across it. Place 7. Gravity Hill, Bedford County's road that rolls uphill. On a specific stretch of road near Shoals Mill Road in Bedford County, a parked car in neutral rolls uphill. Water poured on the pavement flows toward the apparent top of the slope. The explanation is a visual illusion. The surrounding terrain, tree lines, fence lines, the horizon, causes the brain to misread a gentle downhill slope as an uphill one. This happens at several locations worldwide and is well documented. That explanation is completely correct. It also does nothing to reduce how strange it feels to sit in a parked car and roll the wrong direction. Bedford County's Gravity Hill has been referenced in road trip guides and local tourism literature for decades and remains one of the more reliably disorienting things a Pennsylvania road has to offer. Place 6. Centralia's Last Church, Services Above a Fire, the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church sits on a hill above the empty streets of what used to be Centralia. The homes are gone, the businesses are gone, the population is 4, and every Sunday, a congregation drives in from the surrounding region to hold services in the only building left. Standing in a town the state officially erased in 1992. The church was built in 1911 and survived every round of demolitions and condemnations that removed every other structure from the town site. The underground coal fire is still burning. The congregation never stopped meeting above it. There is no comparable situation anywhere else in the United States. A functioning congregation holding weekly worship in the physical remnant of a legally non-existent town, above an underground fire that has been burning for 60 years. Place 5. Laurel Caverns, Pennsylvania's largest cave. A few miles from Ohiopyle in Fayette County, there is a cave system with over 3 miles of mapped passages. Laurel Caverns is the largest cave in Pennsylvania and is almost entirely unknown outside the immediate region. Unlike the limestone caverns common in Virginia and Kentucky, Laurel Caverns is sandstone, a geological rarity. Passages drop as much as 120 feet in elevation from entrance to lowest accessible point. Temperature holds at 52 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Standard tours cover the main passages. Undeveloped spelunking routes are available for visitors who want to go beyond paved walkways and electric lighting. It is not the most famous cave attraction in the region. It is simply the biggest. Place 4. The Eckley Miners Village, a patch town that survived. In Luzerne County, in the heart of the anthracite coal region, there is an entire 19th century coal mining village still standing. Company store, workers' housing, mine superintendent's mansion, and all preserved essentially intact. Eckley Miners Village was a patch town, a company-owned settlement built entirely to house the workers of a single mine. The residents owned nothing, not the houses, not the land, not the store where they bought their groceries. The company controlled the entire physical environment of their lives. When the mines closed, most patch towns were demolished. Eckley survived because it was used as a filming location for the 1970 film The Molly Maguires, starring Sean Connery and Richard Harris. And afterward, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania purchased it as a historic site rather than tear it down. The Molly Maguires were a secret organization of Irish immigrant coal miners active in the anthracite region during the 1860s and 1870s, who were accused of organizing violence against mine operators and supervisors. 20 men were hanged following controversial trials in 1877, trials that relied heavily on testimony from a Pinkerton detective named James McParland, who had infiltrated the organization. Whether those men were guilty of the specific charges against them has been debated by historians ever since. The handprint on the wall of Cell 17 at the old jail in Jim Thorpe, mentioned earlier in this list, is attributed to one of them. Eckley today operates as a living history museum under the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. Walking through it is as close as most people will get to understanding what daily life in a company town actually looked like. Place 3. Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, Isaiah Zager's Mosaic Labyrinth. On South Street in Philadelphia, there is a half-block environment covered entirely in mosaic. Ceramic tiles, bicycle wheels, glass bottles, mirrors, and found objects embedded across multiple levels and connected indoor and outdoor spaces. Isaiah Zager began building it in 1994 using materials salvaged from demolition sites. When a property owner attempted to demolish the site in 2002, Zager and community supporters fought to preserve it. It opened as a nonprofit art space in 2004 and covers more than 3,000 square feet. Zager has also covered building facades along South Street for blocks in each direction with the same technique, murals that have been visible in plain sight on one of Philadelphia's most visited streets for decades. Most people who walk past them treat them as wallpaper rather than stopping to look. The Magic Gardens is the concentrated version. It charges a modest admission and is consistently underrated even among people who have visited the city dozens of times. Place 2. Randyland, Pittsburgh's free art environment. On Arch Street in Pittsburgh's Mexican War Streets neighborhood, artist Randy Gilson has covered every surface of his property in color. Painted walls, mosaic tiles, mirrors, sculptures, and found objects built over decades from salvaged and donated materials at essentially no cost. Randyland is open to the public free of charge. Gilson's stated intention was to build something anyone could experience without paying admission. He is frequently present when the property is open. It has been recognized as one of the most colorful private residences in the United States and the neighborhood around it, which experienced significant disinvestment through the 1980s and 1990s, credits it as one of the stabilizing presences during the years when the block's future was genuinely uncertain. Place 1. The Horseshoe Curve. Altoona's Engineering Monument. In 1854, the Pennsylvania Railroad needed to cross the Allegheny Mountains. The grade was too steep for any straight track to manage. The solution was a curve, a sweeping 220-degree horseshoe-shaped bend, that allowed trains to gain elevation gradually along the contour of the mountain, climbing 1,300 feet over 8 miles at a manageable grade of 1.8%. The horseshoe curve near Altoona was built in 22 months using hand tools, black powder, and the labor of approximately 450 Irish immigrant workers. It opened on February 15, 1854. At the time of its construction, it was considered one of the greatest engineering achievements in the United States, a solution to a physical problem that opened the interior of the continent to rail traffic in a way that nothing else had managed. During World War II, German saboteurs dispatched to the United States, part of Operation Pastorius in 1942, had the horseshoe curve specifically on their target list. The saboteurs were captured by the FBI before any attack was carried out. But the fact that they had prioritized this particular piece of infrastructure in their planning speaks to how critical it was to the American war effort at the time. The horseshoe curve was the key to the continent. Whoever controlled it controlled the movement of everything. Railroad historian H. Roger Grant. The curve is still in active use today. Amtrak's Pennsylvania route passes through it. A funicular carries visitors from the parking area to the trackside observation area, where freight and passenger trains pass within feet of where you're standing. It is one of the most significant pieces of civil engineering infrastructure in American history. It is still operational, and most people who live in Pennsylvania have never seen it. 20 places, a town that has been on fire since 1962, a boulder field that rings, a cave you navigate entirely by boat, a mansion full of mechanical orchestras, an elk herd nobody outside the region knows exists, a church holding services above an underground fire in a town the state erased 30 years ago. Pennsylvania is not a place you pass through. It's a place that has been holding these things quietly, waiting for someone to stop long enough to look. If any of these made you want to go, or if you know a place that should have been on this list, drop it in the comments. And if you found this worth your time, hit like and subscribe. There's more of this kind of history coming, and we're nowhere near done.